What's your I came looking for crumbs but found a feast moment? I tore my entire family apart with my bare hands. My cousin Elizabeth had been hosting Christmas for our entire extended family for 5 years straight. 23 people would show up at her downtown apartment and somehow she made it work. 12-foot Christmas tree, professional catering, beautiful ornaments. My aunts never offered to bring anything except their opinions. Aunt Penelope would examine the crystal glasses and whisper about how lawyers must make so much money these days. Aunt Patricia would run her fingers over Elizabeth's leather couch and make comments about how nice it must be to have no kids to spend money on. I knew something they didn't though. Every week Elizabeth came into Walmart during my shift and bought the same thing: a loaf of bread, peanut butter, and instant ramen. She'd joke with me about her lawyer lunch special while counting out exact change. The week before Christmas, she came into the store looking exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes told me she'd been working those brutal hours again. The total came to $847. She handed me her credit card, but I saw her hand shake a little. On Christmas Day, I showed up at her apartment early to help set up. The place looked incredible as always. Gold ribbons on every surface and enough food to feed 50 people. Elizabeth wore the same black dress from last year, but nobody noticed except me. As soon as she opened the door, the aunts were standing there ready to start their routine. "Elizabeth, darling, the place looks marvelous," Aunt Penelope cooed while eyeing the spread. "That law firm must have given you quite the Christmas bonus." Elizabeth just smiled and offered her champagne. Real champagne, not the cheap stuff. I knew it had cost her a week of lunches. The day went on like always. Uncle Robert complained about the government while eating his third plate of food. My little cousins tore through presents Elizabeth had carefully wrapped. Aunt Patricia made sure everyone knew her son got into medical school. Then disaster struck. The catering staff started packing up the food. The head caterer loudly announced that the payment had been declined. They threatened to take everything back unless someone could pay $1,200 in cash. Aunt Penelope's face lit up with gossip. Well, Elizabeth having some financial troubles? What happened to that big lawyer salary?" Aunt Patricia chimed in. All this showing off had to catch up eventually. Elizabeth's face went white. She fumbled with her purse, pulling out card after card. Each one declined. "This is what happens when you try to impress people," Uncle Robert announced. Elizabeth looked like she might faint. She quietly asked if anyone could help and she'd pay them back Monday. The silence was deafening. That's when I lost it. "Are you all seriously this stupid or just pretending?" My voice came out louder than I meant it to. Everyone turned to stare at me, but I was past caring. This woman eats ramen and peanut butter every single day. I ring her up every week at Fresh Mart and watch her count pennies to afford bread. She skipped lunch for 3 months to afford that turkey you're shoving in your face, Uncle Robert. Aunt Penelope tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "She's drowning in student loans from law school, but still spends thousands on you ungrateful people every year. I've seen her put back milk because she couldn't afford it the same week she bought your kids those iPads, Aunt Patricia. She works 80-hour weeks at a nonprofit defending domestic violence victims, not at some corporate firm." Elizabeth had tears streaming down her face. "And you sit here in her apartment eating her food, drinking her champagne, and have the nerve to call her tacky? She sold plasma last month. I saw the bandage when she came in for her weekly ramen. She sold her blood to buy your kids Christmas presents." I pulled out my wallet and threw my $400 on the table. "This is all I have, but it's more than any of you deserve." That's when Aunt Penelope proved exactly who she was. She clutched her designer purse tighter and headed for the door. "Come on, Patricia, we don't need to stand here and be insulted by some grocery store clerk." But something beautiful happened. My little cousin Zoe, who was only 8, stood up and emptied her piggy bank on the table. "For Elizabeth," she said simply. Then one by one, the younger cousins started contributing. Not the adults, though. They slunk out making excuses about traffic and early mornings. In the end, we scraped together $900. Still short, but the catering manager who'd heard everything waved the rest. Elizabeth hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. "Why did you do that?" "Because someone needed to." The next year, Elizabeth hosted Christmas again, but only for those who'd stayed. 7 people instead of 23. Chinese takeout instead of catering. It was the best Christmas we ever had, but that wasn't the end. Aunt Penelope had connections I never knew about. She was ready to make sure I learned exactly what happens when you embarrass someone with that much pride and that little heart. Full story on channel. Link below.